All right. Well, Rachel, thank you very much for joining us here virtually in San Diego. We're delighted to have you from Magnite join us and talk to us a little bit about this still emerging world of connected devices. As we think about this and we think about the brands and agencies who often come to intermediary companies like yours to ask for help in being efficient and effective, what are some of the things that you're hearing about or being asked about in your daily conversations with these companies?
Yeah, thanks, Lou. I think it's a great question. So we get a whole variety of different questions and a whole variety of different requests from brands and buyers who come to us. I think some of the most common themes that we tend to see are requests for data for the purposes of measurement and attribution. Naturally, advertisers and brands want to see how their ads are working and what's effective and maybe what auctions they've won or who's actually seen impressions. The other request we get pretty often is about sharing data for purposes that we maybe typically don't or historically have not shared data for. So perhaps for the purposes of certain types of audience creations or targeting segment creations. And, we need to be thoughtful and respectful of where we're actually getting that data from before we share it. So we get requests in a number of different varieties. And, some could be as basic as things like measurement and attribution, and then others tend to get a little more complex towards the targeting and segmentation arena.
That's great. And to hear a practitioner day in and day out talk about this is something that, frankly, oftentimes at conferences like these, we don't get to that nitty gritty, but it's important for folks to understand that these aren't kind of blanket requests, that there is a lot of thought going into what's happening to keep your company responsible, right? Because in a sense, and maybe this is a question for you to answer, is like, how do you feel about that stewardship that is basically being thrust upon you by those buyers?
Yeah, it's like how the old saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility, or maybe it's the other way around, right? I don't know. I'm not sure. But, we play this role as an intermediary within, the ecosystem and the environment and the flow of a transaction through the programmatic exchange, whether it's online or through connected devices, right? CTV or mobile. And, we've historically processed data in a certain way where there are certain use cases for which it's okay for us to allow certain types of sharing of data. And then there are use cases where it's not really our place. Our publisher partners sign on with us for a number of reasons. And one of those could very well be the fact that we do take this seriously. And we do like this idea of being, a responsible steward of data. And it's just where we are in the space and just, something we have to live with and manage. And part of that is, sometimes being able to say, no, it's not really our place to decide whether you're able to use this data this way. It's, it's not necessarily our data, or it comes from the publishers, or our publisher partners may not have the expectation that we're going to use data in a certain way. So I think a lot of it comes down to, actually just having some open conversations with our partners about what we can and cannot do and the reasons why. And the fact that, typically, we're doing this really to protect kind of both sides, right? Even though that's not why we're here, to serve as sort of the police or a protector, if you will, or a gatekeeper, but it just sort of happens to be default by where we sit in the chain of things. So, we're happy to do that because it's part of the job. And I think it's a very important part of the job. It helps kind of lend credibility to our standards and the fact that, we do take this type of stuff very seriously. And other companies, I think there are a lot of really good actors out there, and other companies should do the same thing and really consider, new use cases for sharing or the impact it might have on the data source or, the downstream effects. And if you can't share that data, then what are some other ways that we could get to the same end goal in, a slightly less exposed way, right? Maybe there are other workarounds we can do. Maybe we could provide partial data sets. Maybe we can engage with third parties to sort of fill in that gap and, layer on data or do other types of segmentation. So there's a lot of different things we could do, but we do want to be very mindful of, who our clients are, who we're getting the data from, and how can we actually help buyers and brands downstream to get the information they need to have effective campaigns.
It sounds like it's not just table stakes, although it is that, but it is also these open conversations that you referenced, where you can have a meaningful conversation with the other side and explain what is possible, what is reasonable, what is responsible. And I think that serves the whole industry, not just your company, really well. Let me ask you, so on the, we're DAA, we focus a lot on privacy. So a lot of the things you've talked about have touched on it in various ways. But as you think about privacy inside Magnite, what does that look like to you? Just explain that in a way that you would explain it to a brand or an agency who's looking to do business with you.
Yeah, I think if I had that in a nutshell, my job would be a lot easier. Or I might be out of a job, actually. But, I think for Magnite, we sit in an unusual place in terms of how certain privacy laws may apply to us. And we do get this question a lot. And, what is our approach to privacy? And, it's something that's obviously very important to us, just given the fact that we are in the ad tech ecosystem. It's something that's gotten the attention of regulators and journalists and, to name a few. I would say, we do have an onboarding process when we work with publishers. We typically don't have, a blanket agreement, for a buyer to be able to get something across everything. Things tend to be very individual. I think certain publishers may want to share certain things with some partners and not others. So, we sort of take a surgical approach to some of this stuff that fits within a privacy framework that we work under. So, of course, we don't sell data under the CCPA, yet we still offer a do not sell, which is very similar to our opt-out functionality, right? And the whole idea is that we give the end user the ability to say, I want to have a choice. I want to stop doing this. We take things like transparency very seriously, where we've just updated our privacy policy a couple of months ago, and we'll probably do so again in the new year with CPRA and all of those changes coming. So, we do make an effort to be transparent. We do make an effort to provide user choice to individuals, even though, we may not necessarily have an obligation to do so in some capacities or in some, use cases. But, those things are important to us. And we think that consumers have or end users have come to expect those types of choices and have come to expect certain levels of transparency. And so, we work pretty hard to make sure we're at least meeting those aspects of, data protection. The other piece I think that is pretty critical in terms of what we've sort of talked about all along is this idea of user expectation, the idea of our publisher expectations and how we use the data, although not, so explicitly codified into law. I think we can all agree that the FTC enforces against deceptive practices, right? So we don't want to start acting out of turn for what's come to be expected from us, right? Of course, that doesn't mean we're not going to innovate and we're not going to change, but, we'll have to do so, with certain considerations in mind in terms of how we would communicate some of those changes and updates to both our partners and, the end users and the public. So it's a bit of a tightrope act, but, like most, we kind of take one step at a time. There are certain areas that we work in, like the connected TV space, as you guys know, in connected devices, that presents all kinds of other challenges in the privacy space, whether it's, technological limitations or just how individuals engage with certain media or certain types of devices, right? So your permissions on a connected TV may be very different than your permissions through an online browser. Or people may may still be learning how those permissions work in a connected TV versus in an online environment. So we're kind of working through those things and keeping an ear to the ground in terms of how people respond and behave and trying to sort of sort it all out with everyone else. But it's something that we're very keenly focused on.
It's great to hear that you are focused on it because I think the point you made about the consumer still being educated about this new world in which we live in is often not spoken, but really at the heart of one of the big privacy challenges around transparency and control. It's making sure that they understand that this is available to them and that it's always available. And so that is a really terrific point, not just for you as a company, but again, for us as an industry to have folks like you and Magnite out there making sure that those things are being considered in day-to-day deals. Yeah, listen, thank you very much for taking a little bit of time to share that with us and with the folks here in San Diego. And we'll turn you back to your day. It sounds busy, and we'll get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.